Hi, this is Evie Wenting. Let's talk about ethics with Evie, and we are back with Rod. So, welcome back, Rod. I'm so excited to have you.
For having me. I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So, we will dive right into it. And the question that we have today is about the way you conduct yourself on a personal level. Should that affect your work? And I will give a little premise about how we got to this conversation. So, recently, I had made a post about a CEO who fired two employees who were working for her at her company because they both had an affair with each other, cheating on their spouses. So, with that, a lot of I don't want to say backlash, but people were very emotionally charged one way or another about this topic. And I thought it was a great topic to discuss with you. So, what will you say?
Yeah, so you have to look at it. It's a very thought provoking scenario, and you have to look at it from many angles. So, just to give you the gist, when an employee is in a sensitive position, is found to be unfaithful to their spouse, the employer's possible action depends on the personal conduct if it intersects with workplace responsibilities, right? There are different angles to consider. Employers typically act when personal misconduct crosses into professional risk, whether through reputational damage, conflict of interest, or erosion of trust. In high visibility roles, the line between personal and professional conduct is very thin, and companies often choose decisive action to safeguard their credibility and their reputations. But there are legal risks from taking an action, such an example that you used of a CEO firing two employees because they were unfaithful to their spouse or they were having an affair or whatever the situation is, because there are privacy violation that you have to take into consideration.
See, I would ask the question, and obviously we don't know enough about the situation. We just know a little tiny piece of what happened. One thing that I would want to know is, did they maybe report it to each other? Did they report it on their
Yeah.
conflict of interest disclosures? Or was it reported through the hotline? So there's so many different levels because if it was reported through the hotline, they were hiding it. Clearly, they knew something was wrong. Also, the length of time, was it like a one-time thing? And I don't know really enough about it to make a snap judgment, but
Yes.
certainly I agree with you in the assessment we need to know, and it privacy rules, like who found out if it was reported to the hotline and somehow they were out and about. Is there privacy?
I mean yeah, that's why we don't know the details of this particular situation. We were just talking about it, and that's why we have to look at it from different angles to see where the conduct that the employer took, was it the disciplinary action, was it right or wrong in this situation. We will look at it like from different angles and see what the employer can legally do and cannot do in situations like this. You also have to take into consideration, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. You have to take into consideration whether there's a policy that prohibit employees from dating, and whether there is no policy at all. If there is if there is no policy and there are no rules that are set in place, communicated with the employees, privacy violations comes into play, because employees have the right to private life, right? So disciplining someone for personal conduct that doesn't affect the workplace can expose the company to lawsuits and invasion of privacy,
Let me ask you this though, because I would say anyone who has commented and was in the compliance space
right?
felt that she did a just thing, because how can you, if you are not, and so we're talking about philosophical kind
Right.
of ideas, right? And I tend to go along with this. If you are not a person of ethics and integrity on the personal level, how can you be a person of ethics and integrity on the corporate job kind of a level? So I tend to say, like my son, who has, when we had this conversation, would it matter if barista did this? Or would it matter if a person of power, what you alluded to before, like vice president, or maybe it was a finance, or whatever the responsibility they had with the company, if they had a higher level like leadership responsibility, would that matter? And I think it would make a difference on how you look at the person as a whole, right? How
Yeah.
much trust you create. So there is something to be said about behaving in certain way should carry out throughout your responsibilities, whether they're personal or corporate or job related.
Oh, absolutely. But I'm gonna give you the flip side of the coin and talk about reputational damage, of course. But again, we're looking at it from different angles. I'm just telling you how what are the things you have to consider before
Correct.
taking action against someone. Am I violating their privacy? That's one question. Another question you will have to look at is there can they raise a discrimination claim? Because if the action disproportionately affects one group, let's say women or someone who is a gay or some from other protected group, I'm being consistent with my policy, applying it to other people who are that are straight or who are men, and am I treating everybody in the same way, in the same manner? And I have a policy that it's like a stove. Whoever touches it, it burns them. Because if you face the situation and you acted with a woman and you did not act with a man, then you might have discriminatory claim against you. So this is the second thing that you have to take into consideration. The third thing would be a wrongful termination. If the misconduct isn't tied to job performance or company's policy, like we alluded to earlier, firing or disciplining someone could be challenged as unlawful. So before you take an action, you have to ask those three things. Am I violating the privacy? Is there a possible discrimination claim where I treated a man different than a woman, for example? And is there a possibility of this person raising a wrongful termination issue? So those are the three things. Again, I'm just giving you like a legal and compliance angle. The private professional boundaries. Infidelity itself is not illegal. So unless it's directly impacting job performance, violate company policy, employers usually cannot take disciplinary action. But there are risk assessments now. If the unfaithfulness involved relationship with coworkers, subordinate, it could raise an issue of what you talked about, favoritism, harassment claim, or
Conflict of interest,
conflict of interest. Yeah,
that's a big one to me, and especially that came out with the Coldplay concert where you had the CEO directly having a relationship with the head of HR who they reported directly to each other.
right.
Because forget the person, when that first came out, forget the personal relationship. The thing that I had questions about is how long has it been going on? And what were all the different initiatives, promotions, demotions, firing that she wanted and he approved? Were
Absolutely.
they done in a good faith because it was for the company's best interest, or was it what she or he just wanted to do? And those were the things that were troubling me. So certainly I've always worked for companies where and some encourage to have families, not only just relationships, but children working for the same company as the parents or aunts and uncles. There was one that I worked for that really pride on having families working. It was a family business, families working, but we had a very strict policy on not reporting to one another. So you couldn't report. That was number one. And number two is we would on annual basis ask a disclosure forms, and we would ask, do you have anyone who you are related to or have a relationship with working for the company? because we want to know and we want to make sure that we're not creating any conflicts of interest. Very important to us.
That's the key word, that you have a policy in place, and that's what's important. Is, do you have a policy in place that was communicated with the employees, and were the employees given training on knowing what to do and what not to do when they face situations like this? And that's very important from a compliance perspective. Now, you touched on something that's very important, and I feel like I need to discuss it. Is the other angle is the organizational reputation angle, right? Public image. In a highly visible role, such an executive or a spokesperson of the company, personal scandals can affect brand reputation. Employers might consider assignment, coaching, or even separation as a last resort if the conduct undermines the trust because of the situation. If you are a spokesperson, you are conveying the company's image. What kind of image are you given if you are not acting ethically outside work? And the other thing companies take highly into consideration is the stakeholder confidence. Sensitive positions often require integrity. Even if the issue is personal, stakeholders may question you, question the company, and question the judgment, which can prompt employers to act to try to preserve the credibility in front of stakeholders. Have the public opinion, the people, the consumers who are purchasing your goods,
Important.
services. You also have your board of directors. You also have the investors. You have a lot of angles. So stakeholders come from every place around you in the society, and how they see you can affect the way you're behaving and the way that people represent you behave. I don't know if you heard about the SHRM 11.5 million lawsuit that was in the news. Have you, Lorna?
There was something recently that I feel like I came across the news, but I will let you get to it in a
Yeah,
second. What I just wanted to say, it's like you also have to worry about your brand and how your brand is viewed. And let's say, for example, that you are viewed as a Christian brand, right? And then you now have people in the leadership positions that aren't faithful. So that
right.
certainly create even bigger backlash and outrage than maybe it would have in a different kind of organization. I think companies really need to speak the values and mission and the code to their employees at all levels often so that it is really the forefront of what they understand. And if you take risk, everyone at some point takes one risk or another and will not judge, but risks come with consequences. And even if you think it's personal, sometimes it will come to your workplace. There's always that possibility, right?
Absolutely, and the brand that you spoke of, if you are an employer who belongs like to a religious organization, for example, let's say diocese or something like that. The case that I previously mentioned to you, the SHRM case, is that because they are an HR organization and they govern policies
They
and
should know better.
you should know better. When you get sued and you find and the judge finds you guilty and you have to pay $12 million for the victim. It has immense effects on your brand and your public image and how HR practitioner and the public perceive you as an organization. So, you
And
know,
you
boy,
have to
so
build,
are
right? Then you're gonna like when this happens, you're going to have to scratch and say, okay, what has led us to here? And I will tell you, and this is something that I talk a lot about with my clients, and that's why I have clients, is it's the tone in the middle. And it's not only the middle, it's the tone across the entire organization. You need to let your managers know your policies, your values, your compliance program. And not only managers or not only one layer, but it's every single layer so that everyone, without a doubt, in a company understands what is the main goal? What is it at the end of the road? What is the result you want to see?
ab-
Everybody should be on the same page.
Oh, absolutely. And that's why policy, communicating policies and give training and show examples is very important. So there will be no doubt if I face this situation, here's what I need to do. Otherwise, I would be in violation of the company's rules and regulations. So, from some companies go into damage control mode when they found out a spokesperson or an executive has violated policies. They could do coaching and counseling and try to navigate personal challenges with the person without compromising how they can help him out without compromising or violating any privacy issues. They also can go into succession planning where they gradually phase out this spokesperson and they bring someone else, but they do it gradually and slowly in order to normalize the situation. And finally, they look at performance focus. The employer can direct attention to measurable outcomes, holding the employee accountable for work deliverables rather than personal life. And let's be honest, Jack Walsh, for example, the GE CEO, he had in his divorce case, they found some misconduct violations of company's rule of GE and all of that. But he's Jack Walsh. And personal life, but when the person has such a high performance, such a high image, and brings a lot of attention to the company, they're not gonna, from pragmatic standpoint, they're not gonna deal with them as another employee. So they would tolerate. GE did not take any action against them. He was phasing out. He was retiring anyways. But because he's Jack Walsh, they obviously they're gonna treat him differently. Shouldn't be that way, but this is a reality of how the world operates sometimes. But from ethical leadership angle, integrity standards, employers may decide that leaders is in a sensitive role has to embody both professional and personal integrity, setting a high bar, like what you were talking about earlier. And sometimes they deal with it in case by case scenarios. Some organization take a pragmatic view if the personal issue does not spill into the workplace and they leave it alone. Others they see incompatible with the leadership credibility and they feel like they need to take disciplinary action. So really, it's how you look at it, what kind of violation you're dealing with, and you are dealing with when it comes to these issues. Well, we'll talk about some personal, real world examples of what happened when people found to be unfaithful to their spouses. But I wanted to take your feedback on what we are talking about.
Yeah, no, it's certainly one thing that came to my mind is as you were speaking is a lot of times what happens, companies aren't ready for the viral thing. They like what happens is yes, they have some policies, but there's no follow-up plan. The people who may be understanding what needs to get done are maybe not at work because business life is you're going to meetings, you're traveling. So when something actually happens, most companies are sitting and scratching their heads and almost like running like chickens without their heads to try to figure it out what is the next step to
It's not the position to be in, that's for sure.
and I will tell you, so in one of the companies, we had a crisis management team, right? And at some point I got the opportunity to join and take notes and do participate in that. And I found out not everybody always joined from the specific groups. People didn't really care to join. They didn't think it was necessary. So they weren't really emotionally invested because I guess there for them at that time there was no good reason why. Like why to be ready, right?
Yeah.
So at some point we decided, you know what? Let's do a tabletop exercise. And it came at interesting points because at first two events already happened that could be considered as a part of this tabletop exercise. So they almost had a head start for this tabletop exercise, right? One was very unfortunate where a personal relationship, but a vendor personal relationship spilled into a workplace. And this vendor, and this sounds really terrible, and it was, but this vendor invited his significant others. So the vendor was a food supply, like we had a cafeteria. So it was one of the cafeteria workers who was employed by the vendor, came on our location, brought his significant other to that location, and then ended up shooting her on that location. And
Wow.
this happened New Year's Eve, a couple years ago. Okay.
Yeah.
So that was a first kind of a major event that had happened in this organization. And soon as I saw a report on it on social media, I immediately texted my boss. And when he replied back, he's like, we're looking into it. So there was no plan, right?
Yeah.
But it was already being leaked on the media. And yes, they worked with the police and ended up eventually having a town hall where they were talking about it and invited the police. So some of the things they did in the back was good, but they weren't really ready for something big happening and knowing how to address it. It was during Christmas week. There was almost like it was a skeleton crew, right? Then another event, what had happened, very unfortunate, someone passed away in the location. And
Yeah.
didn't understand how to handle that situation completely with communication internal, maybe was it external necessary, not necessarily, but somehow it made it into the papers anyway because people talk what was the policy, what did you communicate. After those two events we ended up having a tabletop exercise, and we had a whole bunch of high senior level employees joining, and I wrote up this plan. I worked with a third party provider to help us actually orchestrate it because they were experienced in the different modalities of the events, which was, it turned out really good. The thing that I walked away from that particular event was each senior leader had some kind of a responsibility, and they were asked to contribute in their capacities. And a lot of them would say, so and so would handle this.
Yeah.
So and so would handle this. And the so and same person was mentioned by whole bunch of people. She wasn't even a high level executive. She was a marketing manager, right? And they expect her to handle all of this. Guess what? If she's that important, she's probably not a manager role, and she should probably be at this crisis tabletop exercise and be part of the crisis management team. That's what I
Yeah.
want.
And the other thing is, you're asking a marketing person or marketing manager to handle a legal issue. It's, you want to talk about taking someone out of their element, and that's trying to give them something that they're not qualified for. This is just
She
heavy.
should have been working with legal, but being part of that conversation because we were talking about internal and external communication, maybe setting up a website and doing all these kinds of things in the realm of the tabletop exercise. But if you have to call on someone to do something for you, they should be in the loop, right?
And that's another thing that might be their shortfall, is that, is this person know the situation, is, or they know what's going on so they can take the correct action. But yeah, definitely they need to be in the loop, like you said.
And that's about being ready for these viral moments. And they are here. We see every day, if you go on social media, certain things get a lot of attention. And
Yeah.
like, actually, there was something I just saw yesterday that had an employee who was fired for how she handled customers in the way. And I don't know enough about the story to say that, but that moment went viral, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And you, as a company, do you know what to do? Do you have a statement ready, or do you need to find someone to help you get the statement ready? Because sometimes time and to something in the bud is really important, right?
Oh,
Coming up
everything.
with a quick statement saying yes, we're looking into it, or whatever it may be. If you have certain things ready, you will be better off and have maybe damage control to your reputation we spoke to earlier than
Yes.
not. So I suppose this call turned into, from personal relationship, making sure you're ready to know if something goes viral. What are you going to do? Do you have a PR company on standby who can help you craft the message in minutes notice? Have you made those investments? It's another kind of side of the
Yeah.
question.
Yeah, when things go viral like this, you have to be ready to address it and address it immediately sometimes. And this is always very challenging, even when you have a PR department or have a contract with a PR company. It's a challenging situation to be in a damage mode. Anytime companies are in a damage mode, it's very hard. And the other thing is, are you selling your argument to the public? Do you have credibility, and are you making a good argument? Because in the Sherm case, they were trying to argue that they're not HR experts. If you can believe that.
Good
uh,
one. That is, so people pay you to attend your thing for HR, to become an HR perspective, but you're saying you're not. But what I was going to tell you too is not only the public, but your own people, your own employees, their trust will deteriorate. The culture of the company will deteriorate if you don't provide them with good information. Like it builds trust to be transparent, right? So, yes, the public and the stakeholders are very important, but I think even more so important are it's the internal piece, which sometimes gets overlooked.
yeah.
Maybe, and there's sometimes good privacy reasons why you don't say certain things, but like with the person in our company that I worked for who passed away, it was in the same building as I was working, maybe not on my floor. I think I may know, but it's then rumors start, so you have to find a way to craft good messages. That's why working with the PR people and who have done this before, but transparency, it is very important because if you can't be transparent, the trust erodes, and then any other initiatives and things that you might want to do will not be as successful because people lose trust and they
Oh,
will not be invested.
absolutely. So let's talk about high profile cases. We talked about Sherm a little bit.
Sure.
Let's talk about other high profile cases that made the news about misconduct. So the recent one was in 2025. Nestle fired their CEO, and what was interesting about it, they didn't even give him the golden parachute. Basically, they found a way just to cut him off. And that was after revelation of a relationship with a subordinate, even though the issue was personal. The power imbalance and the reputational risk made it unattainable to keep him as the CEO of the company. Go ahead.
And I think that one was reported through the hotline.
Yes,
Yeah.
I.
And then another one this year, earlier in May, we had Kohl's CEO who got fired after 3 months working on the job, also for a relationship, not with an employee, but with a vendor
And
who,
that was one of the examples I was going to talk about. So I'm
yeah.
glad you're talking about it. Go ahead.
Yes, I wrote about it saying how I was excited to see this because the tide was changing. Even high level employees are being fired for policy and code violations, where in the past we are we were more used to seeing things like that being overlooked because
True.
maybe they were superstars, maybe they were great salesmen, maybe they were great CEOs, but that the board of directors actually had the courage to stand behind doing the right thing and saying being personal relationship, like we said, there was no reporting relationship, but he
Yeah.
didn't disclose the company, like in the Coles case he didn't disclose the company, and that's his partner, and had just signed off on the agreement. In that kind of circumstance, if you wanted to introduce company to Coles, you have to take yourself out of the loop, provide three other vendors who are in the same realm, and then decide which one is best for the company, not choose one because you have a relationship with it. And
Absolutely, and that would become a conflict of interest right there. So I'm having an affair with this person, so therefore I'm going to choose that person to be my vendor, whether or not it makes sense from profitability standpoint. So might be another vendor offering the same products and service at a lower cost, but guess what? Because I'm having an affair with the vendor representative of this company, I'm going to go with that company, whether it makes sense to calls or it doesn't. So this is a great example on how conflict of interest can play a role when these things happen, or when this person tries to act out of line in his personal life, and how could it affect the company, right? You
Yeah.
might this vendor over others offering the same product for less price. You choose this one because whether it makes sense from a business standpoint or not. So the interesting thing, you touched on the Coldplay. The companies everybody called it the Coldplay case because that was when everything became public and on camera. Astronomer, it's an AI company.
Right.
The CEO resigned. You can speculate that he was pushed out or whatever, but yeah, apparently he resigned. And
I think she did too, right?
no, but the thing, as the last thing I read, that they didn't take any action against her and she stayed with the company. And
Oh,
that could be what we touched on earlier, is that am I taking any risk? Would there be lawsuits for wrongful discrimination if I take an action against a protected female who worked for the company? I don't have issue with her performance, and would her private life affect me?
I think in that level, to me, it affects the trust uh, and the culture of the company. It really, when you're in that position, this was clearly not disclosed. So between the CEO and the head of VP of HR, you did not put it in any kind of disclosure form clearly. Maybe you did, but by judging by your reaction, you didn't, right?
Yes,
So I think that's a good reason enough to let her go because is she
but
in a high role affecting the culture of the company,
here,
right?
here's the caveat to what you're saying. The hard part about letting her go, and maybe they have really smart lawyers know employment law that probably advise them not to take any action against her. They stated that the man, or the CEO, who is a man, resigned. So the company did not take any action against them, right? He voluntarily, whether he was pushed out or not is a different story. But officially, he resigned. He said, I messed up. I'm not good. I don't see myself as a leader, a good leadership for this company. Therefore, I'm resigning. So the company did not take any action against them, whether it's right or wrong. They did not take it. So to take the action now against and give disciplinary action against the female, it might show that they treated her different than they treated him. And I'm speculating here, and maybe I'm throwing this to you to say to think about it. But would the company be liable if he resigned and they didn't push him out, and they come and tell her, no, you need to go, we are firing you? So there would be a double standard, or is there?
I see what you're saying. I guess you need to be on the inside. You
Yes.
you would need to understand what were the circumstances of his departure.
Yes.
And maybe there was like, here is your resignation letter, here's your package versus here's my resignation letter because one looks better than the
Yeah,
other. And
exactly.
if they did that internally, they should have done the same with her. They should both be treated the same way. As far as her staying and seeing what it would do to the culture, I think she should probably be subjected to some kind of a corporate culture training just to show her how these kind of things affect not just her, but everyone down the line, right, who's looking up to her. It really makes a big impact on people. And if you're getting away with certain things because you were in a relationship with certain people, that's not where you want to build your company's culture.
Hey, we talked about last podcast you and I had. We talked about the leadership conduct, how much influence it has on the culture. And what you're saying is a great example leading to what we talked about in our previous podcast. So, wholeheartedly, leadership conduct, whether legal, unethical, just negative, whatever you do, has a great effect on the entire company, the morale, the way they see things, how credible you are, all of that.
You said this, I just reminded myself of this at the last podcast too. Is it matters who you promote. It matters who your give bonuses to. It matters how you move. It's so it would be interesting to watch what the company does next. In
Yes.
this specific case with her specific role. If
Yeah.
we had a crystal ball, is she going to move up somewhere to a different positions or is she going to stay? Clearly, we will not know about their bonuses, but it would be interesting. How are you treating her now that this happened? Now,
Yes.
because for legal reasons, you get to stay, but how are you being, what are the next step that they're taking? And who's making those decisions? Because technically, she's at the top, right? Close.
Absolutely. Close. It's one of the executives in the
Right.
company, the human resource. I think she's like the chief operating officer for another chief, the HR, the chief HR officer for the company. I think that was her job title, CHRO. Yes, she's one of the executives, and it would be very interesting would they phase her out, like we talked about. They have a succession plan where they bring someone in slowly, they train him, they give him the position, and they end up phasing her out. Would they keep her and no harm done? That's your private life and doesn't affect your performance. Therefore, no action taken. So yes, it would be very interesting. There's a lot of example of CEOs misconduct. I would just touch on them real quick. HP in 2010, their CEO resigned for same reason. Lockheed Martin 2012, Best Buy in 2012 too, and those are not very. Yes, it's been a couple 2 decades ago. They're still alive in my memory and what I researched about the topic. The bottom line, there, you know what's so interesting is that there's a lot of companies take no action in situation like this, like in the industry, and it seems like from industry, it differs from industry to industry. This is like something that need to be researched because hedge funds, like for financial companies, Wall Street executives, they have a lot of known affairs and things that happen all the time, and for some reason financial companies don't take actions against them. I don't know if they normalized it or made it something that is normal or expected to happen, or it's something else that not allow them. But several cases executive affairs became public, but the firm did not act because the relationship was consensual and outside the workplace. So some hedge fund leaders face tabloid coverage, but they retain their position somehow. And
Right.
the entertainment industry. So it would be interesting to do some research.
I just looked at Astronomer,
Right.
and with the access that I have, they have a new head of people that is started on October of 2025.
Oh, really? But is she still in the company?
I'm
Or
trying, I don't,
because if she's not, or if she's still in the company, then maybe they're trying to phase her out eventually and bring this person. Like I said, it'll be a succession plan.
yeah, I'm not sure if I'm able to see that, but I think it's interesting that at least they're looking like the employees need some TLC. I want to say that they have a new person coming into the position of head of people to maybe address some of these questions that they may have. Sounds perfect. Thank you so much today for joining. I can't wait to come up with another great topic that you and I can share our information and background. And I like your perspective coming with it from a different area, and especially on the topic we talked about personal relationships and would it, should it, could it affect your job in your workplace? So definitely you brought up some great points.
Yeah, so we try to look at it from different angles because that's how it should be looked at, really. Am I doing the right thing or not from every angle? I enjoyed the conversation. It was a pleasure and really made me think and come up with real world examples. That was really great. And your perspective on what I said was awesome. And as always, it's my pleasure. I'm looking forward to the next one.
Thank you so much.
Have a great day.